Axioms are general truths that are widely accepted on their intrinsic merit. Each axiom has a functional implication and is essential in our understanding of the communication process. Axioms 1. One cannot not communicate. It is impossible to not communicate. Even if someone is not present, if an action has been assigned to them, they are communicating by their absence. We communicate with the people around us constantly, as communication does not need to be purposeful, intentional, or consciously motivated. It happens even if we're not aware of the actions. Everyone communicates consciously and unconsciously. If we are not speaking within a group, our silence can communicate along with our body language, expressions, and reactions to what is occurring around us. Due to communication being constant and continuous, it is impossible to not communicate. Axiom 2. Every interaction has a content and relational dimension. Every communication has a dual dimension, the content and the relationship. The content is the message, thought, or idea that is being relayed, while the relationship is how the message is interpreted between the parties involved. This can be related to the transformation of a 2D square to a 3D cube. As the information accumulates, the body of the content grows to become as substantial as the understanding between the parties involved. During the course of a conversation, the message may be clear, but as interpretation varies between people, a discourse often takes place to make the content as clear as possible. Expressing the content of a conversation in this way aids the relationship aspect, as there is little room for misunderstanding while all the people involved fully understand the subject discussed. Axiom 3. Every interaction is defined by how it is punctuated. Communication between people can be broken down into the actions of stimulus and response, where parties involved react to various statements being made. While this may suggest that communication is disjointed, it is actually a continuous process that is constantly developing between the people involved. Is it the stimulus of what is being said that makes us respond, or is it the response to the stimulus? It is like an infinite helix constantly moving and evolving within the content of the conversation. This can also be related to a game of tennis. When one player serves the other, is the other player responding to the ball being hit, or is the stimulus the desire to send the ball back? The interaction between the stimulus and the response is a fluid, continuous process within a conversation. And it is also predominantly unconscious, making it possible to break down into the component parts. Axiom 4. Messages consist of verbal symbols and nonverbal cues. Verbal and nonverbal communication can be represented by an iceberg. Verbal communication includes speech, sounds, symbols, and writing. It comes from analysis to emerge as discrete digitized communication that can be seen clearly. Verbal communication is represented as the top of the iceberg, while the ice under the water is a nonverbal, which is continuous and, although difficult to see, is still there. Body language and expressions constantly inform the other party with non-words to generate meaning, and we will rely on the nonverbal to interpret the verbal messages we receive. Verbal and nonverbal communications is together and continuous, and while we are only usually aware of the verbal, it cannot exist without the nonverbal. Axiom 5. Interactions are either symmetrical or complementary. Interactions are either symmetrical or complementary. As the word implies, a symmetrical interaction is where the parties are mirroring one another, whereas a complementary interaction denotes opposition to one another. In the other animation, if two squares represent two friends, as one square changes, the other square changes at the same time and mirrors its actions. This shows a symmetrical interaction, whereas if the relationship is complementary, while the colors may be different, they still complement each other. To put this in context, if there is a group of friends, they will simultaneously communicate with each other even if one person is not present, as their absence also means something. There is a constant flux between the verbal and nonverbal. The way this group dress will either mirror or complement each other, which will determine how the communication occurs between them. How each of them accepts the idea of others will influence their reactions. These axioms of communication achieves the closeness of understanding between them with the eventual aim of achieving a successful communication.